Good afternoon. Today we're here to discuss a wonderful fairy tale named Little Red Riding Hood, if you're familiar with it. We're going to discuss one of the more recent films named Red Riding Hood 2011, directed by Catherine Hardwicke. So going into a little background before we discuss some of the visual analysis of this film, The Little Red Riding Hood is initially a European fairy tale. The story of Little Red Riding Hood can be traced back for several centuries, however. Charles Perrault's 1797 variant of the story is the most well-known version. As one of the first written variants of the tale, Little Red is ultimately eaten by the wolf. This offers a warning to young women about the dangers of strange men and speaking to strangers in general. Try to not stray from the path, if you will. There is a sexual element to the story, especially when the wolf tells Little Red to take off her clothes and get into bed with him before he eats her. This is kind of hinting at the theme of rape, in a way. And then we have the Grimm brothers' Little Red Cap, which is a German origin tale. In this version, Little Red fills the wolf's belly with stones after being saved by a huntsman, killing him. The story still serves as a warning about strangers, but it's less sexualized than the Perrault version. The twist ending in Little Red Cap is that the grandmother is still alive and Little Red makes it to the house before the wolf. So when the wolf knocks on the door, they just remain silent. So the grandmother had cooked some sausages and she has Little Red boil them. So Little Red carries the water until the large trough was clearly full. The smell of sausage arouses the wolf's nose and he sniffs and looks down. He stretches his neck so long that he can no longer hold himself and he begins to slide. He slides off the roof, falls into the trough, and drowns. So it's a pretty dark depiction, but at least this time it's Little Red that survives and not the wolf. Then we have The Story of Grandmother by Paul Delarue. Sexuality is very explicit in this variant. The wolf is more aggressive. When the wolf arrives at Grandma's house, he kills her, puts her meat in the cupboard, and stores a bottle of her blood on the shelf. One quote that I found most interesting that the wolf says, he goes, "Undress yourself, my child," the werewolf said, "and come lie down beside me." Despite the theme of rape, Little Red cunningly escapes the wolf and gets home safely. And then we have Neill Hopkinson's Riding the Red. In this variant, the grandmother is the narrator of the story. She recalls her youth when she would ride the red with the wolf. She went on to marry a man that resembled a woodman who saved her. Now we take it to Little Red Riding Hood in film. By 2005, we have Corey Edwards' Hoodwinked, a computer-animated comedy film, which was a very, very unique film in the sense that they made it on such a tight animation budget. It retells the tale of Little Red Riding Hood as a police investigation, using different characters within the story as their point of view. And since it was produced independently, there was such a weird animation to it because of how little money they had to spend on it. But because they worked apart from a major studio, they were allowed whatever creative control that they desired. So you kind of have a twist and turn to your ability there. Cast stars included Anne Hathaway, Jim Belushi, Exhibit, and Andy Dick. And then we also have Matthew Bright's Freeway 1996, which is about a young girl. She's illiterate, she's ignorant, she's not gullible, which is the main difference between most of these stories, is that Little Red is often depicted as being this gullible girl who can't save herself. But what I find so enticing about this film is that when caught in this car with the wolf, instead of just being another victim, she shoots the guy in the face. She protects herself, she saves herself, she gets out of the situation.
Red Riding Hood is a romantic horror film directed by Catherine Hardwicke. It was not only a movie made of a tale, there was always much more beyond that. You have to look more into each aspect and each sign because everything means something. We took a deeper look into it and paid attention to every color, every lighting, and even body language. For example, darkness shows and lets you feel what is happening, and you are able to judge based on the color. It completely changes the way you feel when seeing darker colors, and you become more drawn into the tale. I think they do this so you are able to keep your focus and feel what is going on. Colors can also play such a big role in defining a character, and can make the viewer or reader so judgmental based on the colors they wear. Images in a book or movie prove how we interpret things by what we view. For example, reading a book with not much detail or pictures does not give us the opportunity to understand the role of a character as quickly because we cannot see the way they are dressed or the environment they are in, so we must continue to read until more detail is given.
To start the visual analysis of Red Riding Hood, I'm going to focus on color and lighting. The use of color and the variation in lighting affects the mood associated with the different scenes in this film. The light colors usually convey a lighter mood or a happier feeling. The dark colors usually convey a more ominous mood or just an overall darker feeling. For example, the film opens with light colors, creating a dreamlike feeling around Valerie's childhood memories. In films that are associated with the wolf, which is what the film is centered around, or the hunt for the wolf, or even the villagers, there is a use of darker colors. This heightens the feelings of suspicion and fear that's surrounding the village and the hunt for the wolf. So in the beginning of the film, it opens with Valerie's memories of her childhood. So in the opening scene, Valerie's fond childhood memory of her meeting her friend Peter, nothing bad has happened yet. The soft sunlight and soft tone colors create a dreamlike feeling, letting the viewer know that it is a memory. Continuing with lighter colors, we're still at the beginning of the film. Valerie and Peter are happy together. There's no sign of the wolf yet, and the film still feels light. As the film progresses and the hunt for the wolf continues, the film kind of transitions to darker colors. So compared to the light color in the previous scenes, this is a stark contrast. Valerie is accused of being a witch and being associated with the wolf that is preying on the village. The dark, muted colors of this scene express the fear surrounding the village about the wolf. Continuing with darker colors, here at the climax of the plot, the wolf and the villagers finally confront each other. The identity of the wolf is not yet revealed, and again, there is a feeling of fear and an overall ominous tone. So this film is, as you can see, taking place at night. There's also an element of chiaroscuro, which is a dramatic use of lighting in the film. So you can see there's torches that are lit around the buildings, and that kind of makes it seem even more dramatic. Now transitioning to the human body associated with the visual analysis. So first off, the portrayal of Valerie, who is the Little Red Riding Hood character. She's described as being very beautiful, and she is an adult in the film, so she isn't a child. Also, the clothing in the film helps the viewer understand what time frame this is taking place in. So the character's clothing gives visual clues about the setting, and the setting is a medieval European village. So here's some pictures of Valerie. As you can see, she has blonde hair, blue eyes. She is very pretty. She wears a red cloak, which is similar to most of the other variants. And you can see in her clothing that it is medieval style. With the other characters' costumes, this is kind of reinforced the setting. As you can see, the priest here at the bottom, he's wearing, again, medieval style clothing, as well as her grandmother at the right. Valerie also wears a red cloak that was made by her grandmother, which is a reference to the interaction between Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother in earlier variants of the story. So the context of the film, the setting of the film. The setting of the film is revealed by both characters' clothing as well as the opening scene, which features a medieval castle surrounded by the forest, which is where the village is located. And in the next slide, you can actually see a picture of that. Okay, moving on to audience. Although it is a fairy tale in a specific period, the film is clearly directed at a specific audience, which is young teenagers. The film was released in 2011, which was only a few years after Twilight, and the film had the same director as the director of Twilight. So there are some similarities in the opening, as well as the love triangle element between Valerie, Peter, and Henry. And I think that this is important to note because it is similar to many films directed at early teenagers of the time. So it's not really specifically based on the fairy tale, even though the story is.